afternoon, I'm Bakhtiar Asanov and you are watching A News. Let's see the top stories shaping our world. U.S. President Donald Trump signs a travel ban on nationals from 12 countries and restrictions on 7 others. The European Commission and European Central Bank approve Bulgaria's adoption of the euro currency next year. ACWA Power is to invest nearly $2 billion in large-scale energy infrastructure across Türkiye. The United States has announced new travel restrictions under a proclamation signed by President Donald Trump, citing national security concerns. The order fully bars entry from several countries and partially restricts travel from others, while also targeting certain academic and exchange programs.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation that prevents people from certain countries from entering the United States. The proclamation fully restricts the entry of nationals from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran and Sudan, citing national security concerns.
In the 21st century, we've seen one terror attack after another carried out by foreign visa overstayers from dangerous places all over the world. And thanks to Biden's open-door policies, today there are millions and millions of these illegals who should not be in our country.
According to the White House, the countries facing a total ban were found to be deficient with regards to screening and vetting and determined to pose a very high risk to the United States. The proclamation also partially restricted travel to the United States by nationals from 7 other countries, including Venezuela, Burundi and Cuba. Venezuela reacted to the proclamation, with officials warning against traveling to the United States.
Honestly, being in the US is a big risk for anyone, not just Venezuelans. If you're really that foolish, then go to the United States. Take your vacation days and go to the US. In the United States, the workforce is made up of migrants from all over the world who are there.
In addition to travel restrictions, the U.S. president also signed a proclamation to suspend U.S. entry of foreign nationals seeking to study or participate in exchange programs at Harvard University. The order also directs the U.S. State Department to consider revoking existing academic or exchange visas of any current Harvard students who meet the proclamation's criteria. Harvard University has denounced Trump's executive order, calling it an illegal and retaliatory step taken by the Trump administration in violation of Harvard's First Amendment rights.
Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed retaliation for Ukraine's weekend strikes on Russian air bases during a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump wrote on his Truth social media that he spoke to Putin for over an hour, describing the call as a good conversation, adding it's not one that brings immediate peace. The two also discussed Iran with Putin, suggesting that he could help with nuclear talks with Tehran. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky dismissed Russia's peace memorandum presented at the Istanbul talks on Monday as an ultimatum and suggested a temporary truce until a leader summit can be arranged. Meanwhile, Russia's President Vladimir Putin accused Kyiv of terrorism.
Ukraine and Russia recently exchanged proposals, but remain divided on ceasefire terms and a possible leaders' meeting. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says that Moscow should not fall for what he called Ukraine's criminal provocations. He said Russia should use both negotiations and military means to achieve its goals in Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin later said, "I agree with this." Putin also accused Ukraine of carrying out attacks on bridges in Russia's Bryansk and Kursk regions, calling them acts of terrorism aimed at disrupting the peace talks. Russia's lead negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, said Ukraine proposed a 30 to 60-day ceasefire to prepare for a potential meeting between the two presidents. Medinsky added that Russia conveyed President Putin's view that a leaders' summit is possible, but only if properly prepared. He also confirmed that Russia is ready to start a prisoner exchange between June 7th and 9th, offering to transfer 500 people. However, no name lists have been exchanged yet. In Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky rejected the Russian ceasefire memorandum, calling it an ultimatum. He said the proposals were unacceptable and that continuing talks in Istanbul without real decisions is pointless. Zelensky added that Ukraine is ready for a meeting with Putin at any time and proposed a ceasefire to help prepare for such a summit. He also said international monitoring of the truce could be discussed and that Ukraine would appreciate support for the idea from US President Donald Trump. Putin commented on ceasefire proposals, saying that any ceasefire would likely be used by Ukraine to bring in more weapons from the West. Meanwhile, Germany is stressing unity with Ukraine and the need to pursue diplomacy. Germany's foreign minister said that Chancellor Friedrich Merz will tell US President Donald Trump during his upcoming visit that Europe stands firmly with Ukraine and that no chance for peace should be missed. Germany also added that Russia's military success in Ukraine was never expected and stated clearly Russia will fail.
So what military response could Ukraine now face, and what does this signal for the future of the conflict? To help us unpack these developments, I'm joined by Andriy Ordinovich, a former military officer based in Kyiv with deep insights into Ukraine's defense strategy and Russian military behavior. Mr. Ordinovich, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for catching up again.
Mr. Ordinovich, let's start with the obvious. How serious is Putin's threat of retaliation, and what might it look like militarily?
I would start from telling next story. For the last 6 months, Russia used against Ukraine 28,000 glided bombs, the 11,000 Shaheds, 9,000 different type of UAVs, but with attack purpose, as well as more than 700 different type missiles. I would say it was not the response Ukraine, it was operation plan, well coordinated, but exactly in the opposite. We retaliated for this kind of terror against our country. Secondly, I would say Ukraine never wanted a war. Ukraine doesn't want a war. Ukraine wants a peace. And what our president mentioned, that what we receive as so-called memorandum, it is really ultimatum when you are not feeling your nation. And I would say this war started against Ukraine, or internationally call it war of aggression, due to the very simple reason: imperial policy of Russia and wrong reading history about Ukraine. And I would say, yes, we could expect some so-called retaliation action. Among them could be massive missile and Shaheds attack. It could be also attack on civilian infrastructure. It could be also use a hypersonic, what they already said a couple times. There are also different type of hybrid action, cyber attacks, and on the table the threat of use of nuclear power. But as for today, 3 big and small cities like Priluki, Kharkiv, Chernihiv were hit and struck by the UAVs and ballistic missiles, but not anymore cruise missile. I would say our action, our military action towards Russia, it is signal: don't use your strategic bomber to terror our city, kill civilian, and destroy our country. And we will stop to do any further action like it is. Thank you.
Mr. Ordinovich, Putin labeled Ukraine's government as a terrorist organization during the call with Trump. What implications does this rhetoric have for both military operations and diplomatic efforts?
It is nothing changed from the beginning of a full scale of invasion. They never seen our government as a government for independent country. They never seen our country as independent country. It is very bad because since former Soviet Union, we had numbers of agreements in Russia, and this agreement was broken apart and never followed. And what we could expect? We do have elected president, we do have elected parliament. Our democracy is mature and functioning, and such kind of rhetoric, the terrorists and so on, I would refer to the leadership of Russian imperial states, because they could not understand that each nation based on UN chapter has possibility to live on its own.
Mr. Ordonovich, considering the geography and timing, where do you believe Russia is most likely to launch its retaliation? On the front lines or against Ukrainian infrastructure far from the battlefield?
They do still a capability to use a cruise missile. They do still capability to use a ballistic missile. Today we had another successful operation against a ballistic missile Iskander close to our border. They do so-called retaliation on a regular basis. For example, today we've been attacked 104 air targets. Out of it was 74 different types of the UAVs. We've been able to tackle some of them, but roughly to 16 locations which been hit by these air assets from Russian Federation. They're doing this terror against Ukraine on daily basis.
Mr. Ordonovich, thank you very much for your time and insights. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
The European Commission and the European Central Bank on Wednesday confirmed that Bulgaria meets all the criteria to join the Eurozone by January 1st, 2026. This decision, pending final approval from EU finance ministers, would make Bulgaria the 21st country to adopt the euro.
Hope and fear are clashing in Bulgaria as the country prepares to join the Eurozone. With the green light from Brussels, Bulgaria is set to adopt the euro in January 2026. The country hopes for smoother trade flows and a seat at the ECB's governing council. For businesses, adopting the euro is expected to streamline transactions, reduce currency exchange risks, and position Bulgaria as a more attractive destination for tourists.
I expect a growth in the business, especially after entering the Eurozone, because it will be much easier for everyone within the Eurozone to understand our value, to understand our offerings, and to understand that Bulgaria is one of the most attractive countries for winter and for summer vacation.
But across Bulgaria, public opinion is deeply divided. A recent Eurobarometer poll showed that half the population opposes adopting the euro, fearing price hikes and economic instability. There are widespread concerns that the currency switch could trigger price increases, as seen in other countries during euro transitions in recent years.
It's hard to see it as something positive, because we are an impoverished country. We have become not a third world country, but a fourth world country.
Trust in institutions is low after 4 years of political instability, weak coalitions and repeated snap elections. Concerns are strongest in rural areas where the average monthly income is below the national average of 2,443 lira, or roughly $1,420.
People in rural areas, especially elderly people, they are at higher risk. Not so much of the prices itself. Again, we have a very competitive retail market, but I think that elderly people are at risk at the moment of the change of the currency, especially those that have their savings in their own homes, money in cash.
With elections behind and Eurozone entry ahead, Bulgaria faces a delicate transition where hopes for economic growth are shadowed by the fears of those who feel left behind.
NATO defense ministers have gathered in Brussels for a pivotal meeting, the last before this month's summit in The Hague. At the top of the agenda, a major increase in defense spending across the alliance, including what's being described as historic new capability targets.
NATO's new Secretary-General, Mark Rutte, called Thursday's meeting in Brussels a cornerstone ahead of the alliance's upcoming summit. with far-reaching implications for defence spending.
This will be an important meeting of defence ministers. Today is really key, because we will decide on the capability targets. And this is an important building block to decide on the money we're going to spend in the coming years on defence.
Rutte underscored the urgency of preparedness, framing deterrence as the best form of defence.
To prepare for war, spend more, and when you are really prepared for war, you will not be attacked.
With rising geopolitical tensions, NATO officials are now backing a bold new target, spending 5% of GDP on defence, more than double the current commitment.
To be an alliance, you got to be more than flags. You got to be formations. You got to be more than conferences. You need to be combat-ready capabilities. So we're here to continue the work that President Trump started, which is a commitment to 5% defense spending across this alliance.
That demand, first voiced by US President Donald Trump, now appears to be gaining traction, with countries like Estonia already making the leap.
We will go from 3+% to 5+% in 1 year. So it is achievable when you want to achieve it. 5% during the peacetime is much less than 35% what Ukraine is paying at the moment during the war.
Other defence ministers echoed the message. More investment equals stronger deterrence.
This is an historic moment for Europe. If we are able to reach 5% by 2030 or 2032, we're going to go up to a defense investment that was at the height of the Cold War, and it's necessary for us to...
Capabilities cannot be reached without financial contribution, without financial commitments. 5% commitment, defense and defense-related financial spending is absolutely crucial.
As NATO prepares for the June summit in The Hague, leaders hope to strike a unified front, one that matches strategic ambition with financial commitment.
As global conflicts intensify, commercial aviation is navigating an increasingly hazardous and expensive sky. From drone threats to airspace shutdowns, airlines are being forced to make tough calls that impact routes, costs, and passenger safety.
Conflict zones are increasingly disrupting global aviation, with airline executives warning of rising operational costs, airspace restrictions, and safety threats from missiles, drones, and GPS spoofing. According to Reuters, airlines face growing losses from cancelled flights and costly rerouting, often on short notice. Airspace closures over Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, India, Pakistan, and parts of Africa have left fewer viable flight paths. Compared to 5 years ago, more than half the countries on a Europe-Asia route now need careful review, said OPS Group's Mark Z. Since October 2023, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has brought drones and missiles dangerously close to major routes. Russian airports, including Moscow, regularly shut down due to drone threats, while GPS jamming is surging near conflict areas. India and Pakistan recently closed airspace to each other's carriers amid hostilities. The worst risk is a civilian aircraft being shot down. In December, a Russian missile downed an Azerbaijan Airlines plane that crashed in Kazakhstan, killing 38 people. In October, a cargo plane was shot in Sudan, killing 5. 6 commercial planes have been downed since 2001, with 3 near misses. International Air Transport Association's Willie Walsh called for better information sharing among governments to ensure civil aviation safety. Though accident rates are down, these figures exclude war-related incidents. Each airline navigates this threat landscape differently, relying on a mix of government advisories and internal assessments. Since 2022, Western airlines avoiding Russian airspace face higher costs, while others like China and India benefit from shorter routes. Singapore Airlines Amsterdam-bound SQ326 has taken 3 different paths in just over a year, through Afghanistan, Iraq, and now avoiding Pakistan, as conflict zones shift. Pilots are also concerned. IATA says airlines should judge flight safety, but history shows commercial pressure can distort decisions, warned pilot rep Paul Reuter. Crews can refuse flights over conflict zones, and most airlines respect that.
The United States on Wednesday vetoed the UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, along with unhindered humanitarian aid access. The draft, backed by 14 of the 15 Council members, was blocked by the United States, which argued the measure failed to condemn Hamas or require the group to disarm and leave Gaza. According to acting U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Dorothy Shee, this resolution would undermine diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire that reflects the realities on the ground and embolden Hamas. Israel has also rejected calls for an unconditional or lasting ceasefire, insisting Hamas must not remain in control of Gaza.
Rather than push forward a resolution.
In Syria, thousands of people are reportedly returning from Türkiye in search of a better life, as their homeland seeks to rebuild after years of civil war.
Syrians are returning from Turkey as their homeland seeks to rebuild after years of a civil war that forced them to leave. At Bab al-Salame crossing in Aleppo's countryside, trucks loaded with belongings await re-entry. Authorities say the daily number of returnees is increasing and is expected to double to the thousands as Turkish schools close for the holidays.
We welcomed Syrian citizens under the voluntary return program. Since the beginning of the work, until now, we welcomed around 100,000 Syrian citizens. Today the number of entries is increasing daily, around 1,000 to 1,200. The number is expected to be twice as much, and even more. 3,000 or 4,000 or 2,500 are expected daily, especially after the end of Turkish schools.
Among them is Syrian returnee Ahmed al-Hadid, who had fled his then war-torn country and found refuge in the Turkish city of Mersin a decade ago.
I left Syria in 2015 and lived for 10 years in Türkiye, in Mersin city. Syria has been liberated. We return to our country like any expat who would return to their country. Their country should come first, of course. We settled our affairs, brought our work to an end, and we are heading towards a new job, God willing.
The civil war that grew out of a 2011 uprising against former leader Bashar al-Assad killed hundreds of thousands of people and drove millions abroad. With the United States and European Union lifting sanctions on Syria in order to allow for investment and economic growth, the future of the Arab nation is now looking promising. And the Syrians who once fled the country decades ago are coming back with hope for a better future.
Millions of Muslims are taking part in the peak of the annual Hajj pilgrimage, converging on one of Islam's most sacred sites. The day is marked by deep prayer, spiritual reflection and rituals that unite worshippers from across the globe.
Muslim pilgrims set off at dawn on Thursday to gather at Mount Arafat, marking Arafat Day, the most spiritually significant day of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Clad in simple white robes symbolizing equality and purity, worshippers made their way through the streets near Mecca toward Mount Arafat, also known as the Mountain of Mercy. It is here, overlooking the plain of Arafat, that Prophet Muhammad is believed to have delivered his final sermon to followers some 14 centuries ago. Once at the site, pilgrims climb the rocky hill to spend the day in prayer and reflection, seeking forgiveness and spiritual renewal. For many, it is an emotional peak of a once-in-a-lifetime journey.
It's an indescribable feeling. Glory be to God. It's as if angels have covered one's body and one feels nothing. One feels one's heart trembling with happiness, joy, hope and certainty that God will forgive us and fulfill all our wishes and requests. When one sees this atmosphere, glory be to God, we are on the mountain of mercy, and it's as if mercy has truly descended upon us.
What I feel, I don't know if I can describe really what I feel, because it's really great. We are praising Allah for whatever He has given us and what we hope to have here and thereafter. So what we feel is really great.
The Hajj, Islam's fifth pillar, is a mandatory religious duty for all able-bodied Muslims who can afford it. It takes place in the 12th month of the Islamic lunar calendar and draws millions each year, making it the world's largest religious gathering. After sunset, pilgrims will leave Arafat for Muzdalifa, where they will collect pebbles for the symbolic stoning of the devil, a ritual that marks the beginning of Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice celebrated by Muslims worldwide.
Baku is hosting a major gathering of tourism leaders from across Europe, with nearly 40 countries discussing the future of the industry. At the heart of the event, Azerbaijan is campaigning to secure a crucial seat on the UN Tourism Executive Council for the next 4 years.
Baku takes the spotlight as it hosts the 71st meeting of UN Tourism Commission for Europe. Delegates from nearly 40 countries have arrived to shape the future of travel and tourism across continents. From sustainability to stronger partnerships, key issues are on the table.
Azerbaijan is vying for a seat on the Executive Council of UN Tourism for the 2025 to 2029 term, with elections taking place during the session in Baku. The country has previously served 3 terms and hopes to strengthen its role in shaping tourism policy across Europe.
Of the strong support and visionary leadership.
Today is election day within the organisation, marking an important moment for decision-making. For Azerbaijan, the key priority is securing a seat on the executive board of the European Commission. Azerbaijan has officially put forward its candidacy. There are around 5 seats available, with 9 candidates contesting. Candidates come from various countries, including Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Greece, and others. We hope that Azerbaijan will succeed in the general vote. The successful candidate will serve on the executive board for a 4-year term from 2025 to 2029.
Earlier in the session, Azerbaijan highlighted a 26% increase in international visitors this year. Tourism revenue reached $5.1 billion, signalling strong post-pandemic recovery.
It is the one with the biggest parts.
UN Tourism emphasized Azerbaijan's growing role as a regional leader, especially in the fields of sustainability, innovation, and hosting global events.
Azerbaijan has a key role in the UN tourism. First of all, because Azerbaijan has a place in the Executive Council, that is our board. Second of all, because Azerbaijan has been a good host, receiving international UN conferences here. We have created the Baku Declaration on Sustainability within the framework of COP in 2024. Now in 2025, we are working because we need to create a framework related to social, economic, and of course environmental sustainability.
The outcome of the elections will shape how Europe navigates tourism challenges and opportunities in the coming years, with Azerbaijan hoping to take a leading role.
Tbilisi is shutting down its NATO and EU information center, according to Georgia's foreign ministry. The center, established in 2005 to promote Euro-Atlantic integration, will be merged into the ministry as part of the reorganization. Some staff have already been told they will be dismissed. The move comes amid growing tensions between Georgia and the West. While Georgia remains an EU candidate, the ruling Georgian Green Party has paused accession talks until 2028 and faces criticism for adopting laws seen as pro-Russian. Polluted rivers from Armenia are flowing into the Araz River, putting Azerbaijan's environment at serious risk, according to Sabit Bagirov of the Environmental Protection First NGO coalition. Speaking at a press briefing on Armenia's Metsamor nuclear power plant, he said Iran also raised concerns about the pollution earlier this year. Bagirov added that the entire territory of Azerbaijan could be affected and called on media and international organizations to pay attention to the issue. He also spoke on an initiative put forward by 33 Turkish organizations, saying it shows that Armenia's activities are causing concern in Turkey and Iran as well. According to him, more than 900 mining enterprises operate in Armenia, including 24 that extract precious metals. Saudi Arabia is deepening its energy investment footprint in Turkey. ACWA Power, a leading developer of power and water projects based in Riyadh, is preparing to invest nearly $2 billion in large-scale solar energy infrastructure across the country. ACWA Power is in the final stages of signing agreements to establish a total of 2 gigawatts of solar power capacity in Turkey, a transformative initiative that will see the construction of 2 1-gigawatt solar power plants in the central Anatolian provinces of Sivas and Karaman. This investment, valued at approximately $2 billion, will be carried out under a government-to-government model, a framework successfully used in Turkey's past mega projects, including the Akkuyu nuclear power plant and the Trans-Anatolian natural gas pipeline. The model, backed by special legislation, allows for streamlined procedures such as zoning permits, land acquisition, and technical approvals, significantly reducing bureaucratic delays. Analysts say this will enable fast-tracked project development, a key factor in Turkey's quest to become a regional leader in clean energy. ACWA Power, which operates in over a dozen countries, is already a major player in global renewable energy markets. The company's entry into Turkey marks a significant pivot toward deepening energy diplomacy between Riyadh and Ankara, as both nations seek to diversify their economies and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. While ACWA Power initially proposed importing solar panels and technical equipment from China, negotiations led to an agreement on local content requirements. This means that Turkey-based manufacturers will now play a key role in supplying components for the new solar plants. Industry insiders confirm that ACWA Power has already requested proposals from Turkish manufacturers for equipment and part production, a move that could invigorate Turkey's domestic solar manufacturing and create hundreds of jobs. Experts suggest that this project aligns with Turkey's strategic goals under its national energy and mining policy, which aims to boost the share of renewables in electricity generation to over 50% by 2035. That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.